SIU recently passed 500 chapters of Tower of God, which is just so incredible. It's such an amazing milestone. You know, Season 3 in general has just been absolutely incredible. I feel like the hiatus and everything gave SIU more time to really flesh out what he wanted to do with Season 3 and with the Nest in particular. But seeing all these characters in the Nest, it got me thinking, you know, ever since Season 1, most generally speaking, the characters have been pretty consistent. They haven't changed that much, you know. Some character development here and there, obviously, but as far as visuals go or appearance goes, they look relatively the same as when we first met them, but not all of them, right? Some characters went through some pretty big changes, and most of these changes happened pretty quickly. So today, we're going to talk about some of these design changes, sort of try not to focus on the art style, right? Because obviously the art style changed for everybody, and just see the differences and the changes that SIU made to these characters. Do you like Tower of God? Then subscribe. I'd appreciate it. It'd be really cool. So the first one is Yuri Jihad, who is one of the first characters we met in the story. Chapter 2 is when she first shows up. And Yuri, okay, obviously you look at some of these Season 1 pictures and you can see that the art style has obviously changed a lot. But aside from the art style, if you look at two pictures of Yuri, like side by side, there's a big difference. And I don't really know how to describe it, but the main thing I can see is she's less mature in Season 1. She looks a lot younger. Like, again, not just the art style. She just looks a lot younger. I feel like when we start to meet her again, even at the end of Season 1, like not even Season 2 and 3, she looks so much older. She looks taller, more mature, less... You know what I'm talking about. She just looks older. I don't know, she looks like a princess who's... She's not necessarily like super mature, like the way she acts still makes it so that she's fun and she's... But like visually speaking though, she looks more experienced, she doesn't look like the youngest princess, right? That title would go to someone like Anak or Dorsey. Like she seems to fit her character more, so I can definitely see why SIU decided to do this, and I think SIU did this just with a lot of his characters, or at least a couple of them, because there's another character who goes through a lot of changes that are similar to this, and that's Dorsey. The very first shot we get of Dorsey, she looks more or less the same, but then when you get some full body shots, she looks a lot less mature, very much like Yuri did. She looks younger, she looks closer to it like a Knock, right? If you see them side by side, like they both look kind of young, maybe a little bit shorter, you know, less mature. I'm using the word mature, but you kind of understand what I'm saying, right? But then you cut to like end of Season 1, and then Season 2? She's a completely different person. I think this change is probably bigger than Yuri's, because with Yuri, I mean, you can still tell it's Yuri. She has the black hair, the red eyes, whatever. With Dorsey, though, she looks like a completely different character. I know that I knew some people, I think even my fiance, Amy, I think she saw pictures of Dorsey from later on, back when she was still in Season 1, and she was like, oh, who's that character? You know? And I was like, wait and see. So it's a change that is pretty major, you know, and I think it happens naturally for us because we're reading it, but generally speaking, Dorsey, SIU matured her and aged her a lot. Let's talk about Rachel. So Rachel's not that big of a change. When you first meet her, she more or less looks the same as later on, but I would say she looks more beautiful when we first meet her, maybe even more bright, and I don't know, like, and I think that's not even like, oh, SIU changed his mind. Like, this was an intentional change for sure, because obviously Bomb looks at Rachel as his light, his everything, and we're supposed to trust Rachel and think that she's a good person, for the most part, right? She's still plain looking, but she doesn't look ugly, I would say, in most panels anyway, until later on, in which case she always looks ugly. Now I feel like I should bring up the anime with like these three characters, because the anime is consistent. So like Yuri from episode 1 looks the same as Yuri from episode 13. Yuri looks the same from her first appearance as she does later on. So the anime stays consistent with this, and I would say the anime just made Rachel beautiful. Like, the anime didn't really take the time to make her ugly. They made her look crazy near the end, right? And I think they accomplished what they were going for. It still is good. But in the comic, Rachel gets pretty ugly. Like, I don't want to say ugly. I'm not trying to call her ugly, but everybody hates Rachel, so I think it's okay. She just doesn't look as nice. She just looks more freakish. it's not just her appearance, it's the way she acts that makes her look worse, you know what I mean? And like, that's again, not something that SIU changed his mind about. It's clearly intentional. That change was on purpose. Now this wouldn't be a Tower of God video on the Dr. Bonehead channel without talking about my boy Boro. Now we all know Boro's personality changes from badass to like comic relief throughout the Hell Train stuff. However, I was looking at some of the panels, and when you first meet this guy, he looks really cool, right? He looks like an awesome mentor, he kicks some ass, he slices a lizard guy in half, and it's like, yo, this guy's so cool. He's drawn a lot more like rugged, and his hair is like cooler, and his eyes are like smaller, so he looks more experienced. He just looks cooler, right? But then, as the art style changed a little bit, and as we got to know Boro more, and he got to become more of a funny character, all of a sudden, he doesn't look badass at all. He looks very ordinary. He didn't look like super distinct when we first met him, but again, that rugged look was very distinct from the other characters, and then later on, he looked like kind of like a background character that was a side character. And I think that's just because Boro sort of lost his importance, and you know, it became a comic relief character, and so it fit the role of his character in that time. But it's still a change. Like, it's a stark change. It's not like you don't recognize him, but he does look a lot different. Okay, so this is an interesting one, and it's one that I almost missed. I almost didn't put it in this video, but then I saw an old picture and I was like, geez, that's Karaka? Karaka's armor, in particular, when you first meet him in Season 2, it has this weird design. It has like a mouth. Like, have you noticed that? Because it makes it look like he's not wearing armor. I know that some people that I know, they think it's not even armor when they first read this part. I've seen reactors say the same thing. Again, my fiance said the same thing, I think. You know, he looks more like a snake, I guess. But then later on, it's very obvious that he's wearing armor. And I think, you know, the way it's drawn helps. The color kind of changes, whatever. But it's also this like weird mouth design. It almost looks like he has a mouth when you first meet Karaka, especially in a couple of panels. But then later on, it just looks pretty flat. It doesn't look like he has a mouth there. So I wanted to point that out. His armor does kind of change. This is a bit of a weird one. Mashani. So when we first meet Mashani at the start of Season 2, the very prologue chapter, Chapter 0, she looks different than when we know her now. Like, if you go back and read that chapter, it's like, oh yeah, that's Mashani. And I think it's because she's wearing like more makeup, I guess. And she always looks evil, but there's this like air about her where she's like super obviously evil. But then later on, she's a bit more relaxed and like, it's like a bit of she's more comfortable with herself, I guess. She's not wearing these crazy dresses. She's not wearing all this makeup. You know, she's not like stand tallish and proud. It's like she's just kind of crazy a little bit. This is really hard to explain because she is standoffish or she is proud and she always is crazy, but I don't really get the same vibes. Okay, let's think about it that way. I don't get the same vibes as I do with current Mashani, with Chapter 0 Mashani of Season 2, and I'm not just talking about personality, but like visually. She's not casting off that same personality, in my opinion. It almost seems like two different characters, kind of, especially with Season 3 Mashani, where she's wearing like an ordinary outfit. She's kind of just chilling with Yasracha, you know, and Liborek. It's like a very, very different vibe visually, so I wanted to bring her up. It's not as much as the other characters, but I still wanted to bring it up. These next two are a bit more major. Lei Ro, when we first met him, was a praying mantis, basically. That's the way I always describe it. He had these like huge long legs that kind of expanded outward, like kind of walking around all weird. And I think that might be because SIU wanted Lei Ro to be a bit more goofy at first. And I feel like a lot of characters, like Mr. Neon Plastic Bag was a very goofy character. The Tower was seemingly maybe a bit more cartoonish, but he kind of reversed that. He brought Lei Ro back to being a normal person, a very serious normal person. And I think that was a great move. His design looks so much better without the goofy-looking, bow-legged mantis legs. And then Barrow. I've talked about Barrow as well. She had a lizard tail when you first meet her. It's very odd, and it's not in just one panel either. It's multiple panels where you see this lizard tail. It's not like someone's behind her. It's like, no, she legit had a tail. maybe it's removable, like, you know, because Amigo Chaz, the big guy who's a part of Shibisu's team, his wings are removable according to SIU, so maybe it's something similar, but it's so weird because it's like, is Barrow like cousins with the Knock? Like, what's going on? All right, I'm gonna quickly mention this one. Quant looks a little bit different because in season 1, his hair is slicked back, but now his hair is kind of spiky. That was kind of a bad one. What am I doing? And then Charlie! Because, you know, he got a haircut. Okay, those last two don't really count, but I wanted to bring them up. There's obviously a lot of minuscule changes. It's not like, oh, their design changed. It's like, no, they literally just spiked up their hair or slicked back their hair. That's not the same thing, but you know, for the sake of the joke, let me have this. But yeah, in my opinion, the other designs are pretty consistent. Like, Rak is very consistent. Iwa, Hwaryun, Ran, Anak, Shibisu especially. Even like Wangnan, his hair changes a couple times, but like overall, it's really just the art style that changes, you know? Aside from the ones that I previously mentioned, where I feel like it was a bit more drastic, they look very different. These characters, you could look at season 1, season 2, season 3, and still say, oh, I can see that, you know, I can see the art style improving and still recognize that character. While the others, it's a bit more of a major change, at least in my opinion. But in general, I mean, SIU is such a legend, is such a god at drawing and writing. It's so cool, and it's really cool seeing how he makes these changes, you know, how he starts off, he thinks about it some more, makes some additional changes, sometimes right away, like with Lei Ro, sometimes gradual, like with Endorsi, and I just think that's really cool. I think it's a testament to SIU adapting and improving as an author and an artist. But anyway, are there changes that I didn't think about, characters that you think look very different from start to finish? I'd love to hear about it in the comments down below. Thank you so much for watching. Like the video if you haven't already, but only if you like the video. If you didn't like the video, then I'm not gonna hold you to it. Patrons, thank you so much for your support as always. You guys are awesome. I know you're requesting lore videos on certain characters. I'm gonna get to that. I'm also gonna be holding some polls on Patreon about maybe like what video do you want me to do next? What scene should my team dub for Tower of God? Because I wanna do more like scene, just dubbing some scenes from Tower of God. I think that'd be really fun. So I'm gonna be posting on Patreon about that. So stay tuned for that. Discord server down below. Stay tuned also because a week from this Friday, we're starting our Tower of God Pokemon Randomizer Nuzlocke, meaning we're naming all the Pokemon after Tower of God characters. If they faint, they're dead. We have to bury them, and it's very sad. We could have Rak die, or Kun make it to the end, or maybe Wangnan, you know, Wangnan's gonna be the trainer name. It's gonna be a lot of fun, so stay tuned for that. It's gonna be a blast. And with that, I'll see you guys in my next Tower of God discussion video. Take care.